Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host Usha Kumar. I'm so happy to have here with me today Kelly Mullins from Women's Center. And she's here to discuss teen dating violence. Hello Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hello Usha, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
You were here last time about a year ago.
Yes, I was.
Right?
Yes.
Talking about very important topics, sexting.
Sexting and cyberbullying.
And cyberbullying.
Yes.
And we were warning our viewers not to fall into the same traps that the current congressman has fallen into.
Correct. Apparently he did not see our show last time, Usha.
So today we are going to talk about teen dating violence. And as I was announcing to our audience, Women's Center, it used to be called Women's Center of Greater Danbury, right?
Yes.
So why did you change the name?
Well, we just took that little of Greater Danbury part off because we wanted people to know that we service Lower Litchfield and Fairfield County, and a lot of times people were thinking it was just Danbury for one. For two, it is a long name. And so we tried to create something a little more inclusive so everyone knew the areas that we serve.
So how far do you serve? I mean, how far?
Well, we go from Bridgefield, Reading, Danbury, Brookfield, New Milford, Roxbury, all those areas.
Oh, I
Newtown,
see.
Bethel.
And north of us?
And
which area?
yeah, even into Kent, New Milford, Kent. We have the areas, if you put a finger on New Milford or Danbury on the map and drew a circle around it, you kind of see like the 13 towns that surround
Oh, I see.
Danbury.
So you cover all the 13 areas.
All of those areas, yeah.
Oh, I see. And a lot of people don't know of your existence. And that is why they don't know where to turn to when they do have problems like teen dating violence. They don't know who to report to and where to get information so they don't become victims.
That's right. And the Women's Center, we've been around for a very, very long time, and we are a nonprofit agency for domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and we can be reached by, I can give those phone numbers, 203 731
5200.
5200, and that is our main phone number for information or referrals or to make appointments. But we also have two 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotlines. So if somebody needs us 24 hours a day, they can get in contact with us. So for dating violence, that's 203-731-5206 for dating or domestic violence.
I see. You have a Bachelor of Arts degree
Yes.
in communication and theater
And
arts.
yes.
So how did you end up here?
Well, it's pretty interesting that I one day happened to be reading the newspaper and saw that the Women's Center needed volunteers who wanted to become certified as hotline counselors. So I came to the Women's Center, went through the whole training, and literally started out as a volunteer on hotline for about a year or year and a half, and then a position came open at our shelter, and I became a residential counselor there.
So that was your first job here?
That was
As
my
a
first
residential
official
counselor?
residential
in
counselor.
which department or which area?
And that was actually working at our shelter. Our shelter and our office are two separate locations. The shelter is for women and children who are fleeing a violent situation, a violent person, and they need
At home.
a safe house. Correct.
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence, correct. And my degree with theater came into play because I created an acting group called Act Out, and they're an educational theater troupe which I bring to different schools in the area as a way to teach students about healthy relationships versus dating violence or bullying.
So if any schools want to call you, they can call the same number to get information.
They can call 203-731-5200, ask for Kelly, and we can set something up. It's what I do. It's my main job as a prevention educator.
What a lovely service.
Thank
Which
you.
demographic group do you counsel?
We absolutely anybody who needs help can call or come to the Women's Center. we are the Women's Center, but we are for women, men, boys, and girls. Anyone can come to the Women's Center for help or call us.
And so, starting from preschool children, or
Absolutely. We have a child advocate, and even going into schools, I usually start with 3-year-olds, and we do puppet shows and talking about what is a safe touch, what is an unsafe touch, what are boundaries, which leads us into issues of, what is bullying, what's a healthy relationship. And we may see a child right on up through being high school seniors and even into college. And then when they become parents, we may see them again in parent workshops.
Oh, I see. That's a wonderful service to the community.
Yeah, and everything that we do is free for the community.
Is this supported by the state or agencies
Well,
or other?
We are a member of the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence,
Okay.
And Connecticut Sexual Assault Crisis Services.
Okay. So the state provides some funding for this?
Well, the coalition can provide some funding. We have to do our own fundraising. We do a few big ones a year, and we get a little money here, a little money there. Just like any nonprofit, we have to support ourselves.
Do the school systems provide any information? I mean, give you any money, funding?
Because our services are free, occasionally someone will give a donation. But usually, schools are a lot of times in the same position trying to save money just like everyone else is.
So basically for the schools and the public, you're giving free service?
Our services are free. Mm-hmm.
I see. We're talking about teaching children, like what's safe touch, what's not safe touch, and how to practically have a healthy life. But what makes a healthy relationship?
Well, when we talk to students about a healthy relationship, whether it's a friendship or a dating relationship or even a marriage, we're talking about issues of respect. And what does that mean, respect? Because we hear the word, okay, what does that mean? And I will ask students individually to think about what respect means to them and what they want. They want someone who will listen to them, who will consider their feelings and their ideas and their thoughts, and even when they disagree, they can disagree in a healthy way. We talk about boundaries a lot, especially with issues of teen dating violence. Boundaries are often crossed where teens don't realize that this is not okay. It might be multiple texts in minutes, or it might be someone who is just wants to know what you're doing all the time. It might be someone who disregards your physical boundaries. And when you say, I don't want to be touched or held or whatever it is, if that person doesn't respect that boundary, that certainly shows a relationship to be unhealthy. We talk about issues of trust, and trust in a relationship being, most people will think, well, trust means that my boyfriend or girlfriend is not going to cheat on me when they go to a party. Yes, that's trust, but it's also knowing that when I am upset or I want to share myself with my partner in some way, I know that they're going to support me, they won't make fun of me, that they're not going to tell other people. That is a huge part of a healthy relationship, and as well, healthy communication.
So communication, I guess, to start with, right?
Communication,
you need to have that, and the other person has to listen when you say something.
Exactly, and one of the things that we really talk about a lot is the biggest part of communication is listening to someone. And if you have a partner who listens to what you say and acknowledges your feelings, even though they disagree, it's okay to disagree, but it's how you disagree that's important. So knowing that you can talk to someone and that they'll talk to you and you can listen and share. Very important.
Yeah, I saw in your list of items you have for that: communication, empathy, equality, trust, honesty, respect. I think we covered almost, all of those. And then boundaries, attraction, like or love, fun, And conflict management.
That's right. Because ultimately, even the healthiest relationships are going to have conflict. And learning how to conflict in a healthy way makes a good relationship. Oftentimes when I'll be in a school and I'll ask, well, what do you think of when I say the word conflict? And students will say, well, it means a fight, it's bad, it's horrible, it's something. And I'll ask them, what would you think if I told you conflict could actually be good for a relationship? Well, they just think I'm crazy when I say that.
So they want you to give an example at that point.
They want an example. And once they start to realize, wait a minute, if I learn how to deal with my conflicts, it gives me more self-esteem, I have more trust, our intimacy in our relationship is greater. They start to recognize those points. And ultimately, I would like to mention also that fun is a big part of relationships, especially teen relationships. Even though it's not always smooth and perfect, it should be fun. And if it's not fun and making you feel good about yourself, then it's probably not very healthy.
And that's not the right relationship for them.
Possibly not.
What is dating violence? I mean, what would you consider as violence?
Well, dating violence would be considered a pattern of one person trying to have some kind of power and control over the other person. And they do that either by threatening the person in some way or actually being abusive to them. And it's really that simple, that there is a pattern to it. It's not that one day, you know, my partner got upset and they kind of yelled at me. That may be disrespectful and inappropriate. But if that happens every time that maybe I wear a certain article of clothing, or every time I want to spend time with my friends, they scream and yell at me and call me a name, that's abusive.
And either one can be the perpetrator. It can be the girl who's doing that or the boy doing that, right?
There is abuse in relationships, female to male, male to female, and in same-sex relationships as well.
I see.
And it's important to know that much of the time when we look at domestic or dating violence, 90 to 95% is male to female. But it does happen female to male. So there's a bit of a stigma about that, where males feel like, well, if I'm being controlled by my girlfriend, I can't say anything.
Yes.
But we want people to know that absolutely they can say something and
they
come
can
to the
even
Women's
come
Center.
to you for help, knowing exactly how to handle that person. I think we'll come to that next, right?
Right.
In what way do they have verbal violence? Even if they just fight, that would be a violence?
Well, verbal abuse might be if somebody's name-calling or putting somebody down, criticizing. And when that happens, there doesn't have to be something physical happening for it to be considered abusive. So verbal abuse, putting somebody down, and after a while, if my partner, who's supposed to care about me, is telling me, day after day that I look terrible and I'm fat and I'm stupid, after a while I start believing it, and my self-esteem ends up going down and down.
That's very true.
Yeah.
What's emotional violence?
And emotional abuse would be, it can be manipulative behaviors or blaming somebody. It really undermines someone's self-confidence. So it could be, an example might be, you made me angry because you were late. It's your fault that I'm yelling at you and screaming at you and calling you names because you were late. So it's blaming the other person. And that person may start to feel like everything is their fault. It might be using things like jealousy, where I wouldn't allow my partner to speak to anyone else. And if they do, there's a tremendous amount of drama, and maybe I give them the silent treatment if they talk to someone else. Yeah. Or I threaten to constantly threaten to break up with them if they talk to someone else. So you notice that their behavior might end up changing, and friendships may fall away because I decide I want to control that person and not allow them to speak to anyone.
Uh-oh. I think that happens a lot, though.
That happens a great deal.
And people don't, and people who do that don't realize that that is a form of violence. They think, oh, I'm not being aggressive, I'm not beating up anyone, and they think only beating up someone is violence.
Right. And you have to look at the way that it really is a control issue. Because emotional abuse, sometimes I like to call this kind of this secretive, sneaky way. It's not out and outright sometimes, and it sneaks up on somebody. They don't realize it's happening. You know, these little put-downs, these little criticisms, after a while kind of seep into our self-esteem, and it starts to bring us down.
It starts to erode it. Physical one, everyone knows. Physical violence, people can identify, and that's definitely a clue to get away from that relationship.
Yeah,
or change it in some way, right?
And oftentimes people mistake, you know, any kind of grabbing or holding someone back or shoving and slapping, hitting, punching, anything like that obviously is considered physical. But even intimidating someone in a physical way, or breaking things that belong to someone, smashing cell phones, that's an intimidation tactic.
What would be economic
Well,
violence?
economic abuse...
Does that happen at the teenage level? I know it happens at the adult level, but at the teenage level?
It does happen at the teenage level because it might be, the best way is to give you an example of someone maybe who continually buys their partner things or little gifts. And they may be trying to create a sense of obligation. Well, maybe they're trying to buy that person's love. And that does happen a lot. Well, that person did buy me things, they did take me to the prom, and they took me out, and this. Where is there a sense of obligation they're trying to create?
What are the elements of a healthy relationship management? Because we talked about what healthy relationship should be, but how do you manage it? How do you manage and achieve that?
Well, one of the most important things about a healthy relationship management is knowing that it's not necessarily all hearts and flowers, that there will be conflicts, so learning how to resolve conflict, and we can all learn how to deal with conflicts in a healthy way, how to speak to each other, fighting fair techniques. When you're really upset and you're really angry, that's the time to walk away and say, I need a break. Learning little techniques like this and really practicing them.
Do you give handouts to that effect? Showing, like, in this situation, this is what you do. Do you have those?
And when I go into a school, we have a handout. We will talk about things, we'll go over the information, but then what I really love to do with kids especially is to do role plays. Okay. There's no better way to teach them how to conflict or how to stand up or deal with something than by having them actually do it. So I will have them do a variety of role plays just to practice.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, it might be, one of them might be as simple as students who, one student who takes the other student's things all the time, whether it's a math test and they homework or they copy it, or they take their water and they don't ask. And that's something that happens in school a lot. So what you use are what is called the I statements. I feel angry when you take my things because you know, I feel disrespected. I would like you to stop doing that. So I teach them those statements, how to make a statement that's not blaming somebody else, but just expressing how you feel.
Oh, I see. And does that work?
It does work. I'm not going to say that it always works, because that is not true, but it is a healthy way to address something. And I also say, if you recognize that you're using all these healthy techniques, and you're talking to, whether it's your partner or your friend, and expressing yourself, and they're not respecting you, and they're not listening to you, you have to ask yourself, is this a healthy relationship? Is this good for me? And that in and of itself can be, you know, a way that somebody is controlled in a relationship. Well,
So what would a good friend do when the friend says, oh, this is how I feel, you know, please stop doing this, you know, taking my water bottle all the time. So what should the other friend do at that point to not create more conflict? So, but how does she acknowledge that? And
you said the exact word, acknowledge it. First and foremost, recognize that, oh, wait a minute, you're upset. Oh, okay. Oh, I understand. You're upset because when I take your things, you feel like I'm not really respecting your boundaries. So you've got to say something back to that person that lets them know that you've actually heard what they said. And that's the most important part. Again, going back to communication, listening is the most important part.
So,
and then with that, a well-placed apology. Be responsible for what you say and what you do. Take responsibility for it. And that's one of the best ways that people can deal with each other and try not to let their ego get in the way. Or
I think that does get in people's ways a lot.
Absolutely, whether they're adults or children.
So can you give me an example of a friend who doesn't take it the right way, and what happens?
Well, and this will happen in schools a lot, where something can mushroom into a more difficult situation because the friend might feel like, well, you don't like me anymore, or they didn't take the time to either listen or clarify what the other person was saying. And it might, in a school, especially middle school, will mushroom into something where students might try to get other students to dislike that student.
Yeah, they gang up and
then it turns into a bullying issue.
I see. But that's quite dangerous when that happens. That is why sometimes people are afraid to express, say, oh, I feel this or whatever. Oh, she took it, I'm angry, but I don't want to say anything because she won't take it the right way.
Right. Or they feel like, oh, she's going to do something to me back, or it's, you know, I'm going to get in trouble for it. And that also happens in school a lot of the time. However, there's a point where what we try to do is allow people to express themselves. They have to express their frustration, their anger, and allowing other people to accept, you know, oh, I've angered my friend, I've hurt them, without feeling like, oh, I'm a terrible person. And there's a big difference between, you know, accepting responsibility and feeling like, oh, I'm a bad person.
In terms of teen dating violence, you know, it as you just explained, it has a lot to do with power and control, you know, and whoever wants to have that power tries to control the other person, and that's how all of these violences happen. What can parents do to warn their children if the children don't recognize it themselves?
Well, there are some warning signs to be aware of always. If a parent notices that their child is, maybe they're more withdrawn, maybe they're isolated from their friends, like their friends, they're not with their friends as much, their friends aren't calling as much, that it seems like their relationship is just with this other person. That could be a warning sign. Maybe things like anything like torn clothing, loss of cell phones, constant texts and phone calls.
Coming in.
Yeah, that's always a big one.
So how do they address it?
Well, again, opening a dialogue, talking, but one of the most important things that anybody could do, friend, parent, is to point out behaviors as opposed to saying, well, that person is terrible for you and that's a terrible person. Say, I've noticed that, wow, your boyfriend texts you a lot, and it seems like he really wants to know where you are and what you're doing all the time. Is that all right with you? I mean, it seems like you don't get much private time.
Okay.
And just making comments about the behaviors, not the person. That's the main key. And being supportive, always being supportive. Because it's difficult to be a friend or family member of someone who is in a bad relationship. And we might look at them and say, well, why don't they just leave? And we may become frustrated with them. Why aren't they just leaving? And there's drama, and they're crying, and they're upset, and clearly this is a painful relationship, and yet they stay. So as parents, friends, we have to continue to be supportive of them, even when we're frustrated.
A lot of children, teenagers, when they go through this kind of violence, they really don't turn to anyone. They don't ask their teachers or their parents. These are the last people they'll go to. Probably they'll go to their friends. But they don't really seek the kind of help they should be getting, right? So what should they do?
Well, and you were right about that they go to their friends. 70% of teens will talk to a friend first before they'll go to a parent or guidance counselor, teacher, or anybody else. And that's really important to recognize that as a friend of someone, we can help them by just being supportive.
I'm not sure if we put the website for them, you know, for the Teen Dating Violence Interactive site.
Yes, it's TD.
Do we have that there? The www.td411.org. Can you just repeat it once for the audience?
It's td411.org. O-R-G.
And this is an interactive site?
Yes, they can go on and they can take a little quiz, you know, what is my relationship, that helps them to determine, is this relationship healthy or unhealthy? They can get information. There are some videos on there. We also have...
you have something on YouTube, right?
We do. We have a PSA, a music video. There's a full video, but there's also a public service announcement that's 1 minute.
So what should they search for so they get to that
They
YouTube?
can look for the Women's Center PSA, or they could look for Haley Noel, who is the artist who sings and is in the video.
And that will give these children enough information, even if they don't want to go to any other adult for help.
Right. This can be a great resource for them to get a little more information, but also even as a friend of somebody who you recognize, wait a minute, I don't think their relationship is very good. You can go to the site, or you could call the Women's Center to get some ideas about, well, how can I talk to my friend? How can I let them know that I care and what's happening is not right?
And that will be anonymous? They can just call you and they can get it?
The Women's Center is anonymous and confidential, that's right. You know, if someone calls our hotline, we do not subscribe to caller ID, so we have no idea who they are.
So your hotline number is 203-731-5206?
That's right, 203-731-5206.
Thank you all for watching, and until next time, goodbye.